All righty, so here we are. Welcome back, everybody. And this is where we left off last week. And so just as a brief reminder, it doesn't mean that what a horse is feeling or what we are feeling is any less than because someone or something outside of that realm is determining it's stupid. So as in this diagram, the person holding the lead rope is like, really? I can't believe this. How can you be so stupid? Like, what's your problem, man? Well, that doesn't help the horse. That doesn't help what's going on inside of it. And nor does that attitude help another human being, because it doesn't really matter what we think. It's about having enough empathy to understand all of the things that are going awry in either the horse's body or another human's body when they're undergoing these kinds of responses to stimuli. And so really, really important. And I can't say that enough. And I guess it's a really big bee in my bonnet, because the whole time I had the worst amount of fear. I had people laugh at me. I had people tell me I was stupid. I had people yell at me because they thought yelling might be able to just kick my ass in gear and I could somehow magically suck it up and get on with it. I had people ridicule me. I had people minimize it. I had people telling me that I was too, like TOO, this or that or the other thing. And so I know exactly how awful it is to have to bring any of these kind of issues up to the average person, because you can't rely on them to have a decent response. So I'm really reiterating this because I'm expecting everyone that's learning this stuff to now treat everyone else in a totally different light, because you actually understand all of the physiological things that are going on and the impact they have. This is not a mind disorder. This is not get over it thing. This is a repair it thing. And so I want to be very, very, very clear on that. Okay. And so I have another little thing that I'm going to kind of read off while we're here. And I thought this might be kind of interesting. So a horse's brain, in comparison to ours, is relatively small. But their cerebral cortex, or conscious thought, for decision making and memory, and their hippocampus for learning and memory, and their cerebellum for movement and coordination, are all very well developed, even though it's a really small size. And so the brain in size only makes up about 0.1% of the total weight of the horse's body. Pretty tiny. And so even though they're that small, they're able to learn and remember. And they function like us. They have a left and a right hemisphere. And the difference being the hemispheres don't work together simultaneously like ours do. But nonetheless, they're working. And they can remember people, places, and experiences for years. And I know this, I've seen that. And most of their communication is subtle and not visible to the eye unless you're really paying attention and really looking. And of course, we already learned their sense of smell is pretty great. They have a high pain threshold, and they're able to feel emotions like fear, happiness, and anger. And so if we are having trouble with the physiological system within our body, meaning we're more in a sympathetic state, the horse is going to feel that. The horse is going to recognize that. Now, dependent on the horse will be the reaction that you get. So a horse that doesn't have high self-preservation may be more apt to come and want to investigate, may be more apt to want to try to bring its energy forward to change your energy. However, horses that have high preservation issues or that are having physiological problems within their body because of the sympathetic locked on are going to feel that, and it's going to set them off even worse. So they are not going to want to have a thing to do with you. They're going to avoid you like the plague. And so this applies to humans as well. So, and we get to see this a lot in humans because somebody themselves, even though they don't want to admit it, they're all fucked up. But now they want to try to help somebody else because most of the most fucked up people I've ever met are all in the psychologist or psychiatrist or medical system somewhere, because as long as they're helping somebody else, they don't have to deal with their own shit. So what that means is a lot of times they can't do their job well because the person that's already in that state, their body is already reading what's going on in the so-called practitioner's body. And then the practitioner wants to write in their notes, yeah, that person can't be reached, that person won't open up, that person is volatile, that person is whatever, with no thought process, no regard to what their part in all of that might be. And so now let's take this to the horse. So you're the human, you have a horse, but you're not busy addressing yourself. You're not busy addressing your shit. So now you pack that into every time you have an interaction or you're within 30 feet of your horse. And so that impacts the horse. And so now when the horse acts like it's out of control and it can't manage its shit, the horse has a problem. And at no point in time do you stop and look at yourself and go, what part of this is me? What part of this is mine? And so these are really big ticket items. And with everything that we've been learning through part 1 and now into part 2, it's really time to start stepping up to the plate and really taking the time to take a look at what you may be bringing to the scenario and the effects that that may be having. Because if you have a belief, rest assured, it's going to distort your perception. It's going to change how you see things. It's going to change everything. And it's really, really, really important that we kind of get a handle on this. So the next few slides are kind of a review and kind of, keep building on the fear thing here. Now, typically, if I had a lot of people showing up, which would be nice, we would have a discussion, but we don't. So mostly I'm going to be doing the talking and there'll be not much for discussion. So here we are. In this horse, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you say is the level of sympathetic response that the horse has? So 1 being almost nothing and 10 being really high. Okay. And so this is probably going to be about a 5. And it's going to be about a 5 because the horse has stopped chewing. The nostrils are expanded. All the musculature in here is tight. So that jaw is tight. The eye is fixed. We're getting tension lines in here. The ears are pointed way forward. The tips are curled up. We have the arch in the neck. We have the tension here in the shoulder. We have the stance here. So, and if you look at how the musculature is here and up in here, you can already tell that the horse is already starting to push back, already starting to move its weight onto its hind end off of its front end. So it is getting, whoops, get back there. It is getting totally busy and ready to be able to turn on this haunch, because you can see the tightness here. So you know most of the pressure is there. So that means when it wheels, it's going to wheel this way. So we already know all of this. It has its tail lifted up and out of the way. The muscles here are tightened. So it's getting ready to engage. So this is the amount of information we can get from that picture, which is a lot. All righty. So now in this picture here, what is happening here? Like, what is being said?
So it looks like the one's intruding on the other space, and there's going to be an argument.
Okay, yeah, yeah. And so this here, this would be my guess. This here would be a mare, would be my guess. Now, she does have a little bit of tension, because you can see a little bit here. You can see a little bit of the tightness here. Now you can see the little bag under her eyes. So remember, we talked about earlier, that little bag under her eyes means the lymphatic system's not working the best. So overall, this horse is experiencing tension, and it's probably been experiencing some sort of tension for a while. Now this horse, even though it's a big horse, looks to me to be immature, because a lot of immature horses do this mouthing thing. It's a subordinate gesture. And so you really get to see it in colts. And so this horse is saying, I'm subordinate. So yes, you're pushing into my space, but I'm the weaker one here. I'm not going to do anything. I will do my back off. I will back up. I will retreat. I will whatever. And so when we look at the open mouth here, we notice the tension in the chin. And we notice the little bits of tension here. And then if we go on up, we can see the tension in here as well. So the horse is concerned, this horse here is concerned about this interaction. This horse is more concerned than this horse. So this horse is, I hate it when my thing disappears. This horse is reaching forward. This horse is pushing its head back and up, getting it more out of the way. So this will be the horse that leaves the scenario. In the odd situation, if this horse feels threatened enough, it may strike, but typically not. All right. Okay, so what is this horse saying? Okay, so again, we're going to start looking at the tension in here, the tension here, the big nostrils, the big eye, and you can actually see up and that slope that we talked about. So there's a lot of concern, a lot of tension here. Now we have the tail up. And so a lot of times when horses are prancing, I can't even speak, prancing and playing around, they assume this posture and it's playful. When you start looking at the neck thing here, the tension in the neck, tension down here, tension in the face, my guess is somebody is making this horse run, making this horse concerned because somebody's trying to get a photograph. And the horse is not comfortable with any of this. And so whatever just popped up very quickly because this leg's planted. All the weight is coming back. And so it's probably going to turn this way and the weight will go back on this foot. And so, sorry, but my stupid thing just keeps going, whatever. So that's what we're garnering from all of this. Okay, so now, what do we see here? What do we see in this face? Okay. All righty. So, we have the tension lines here. We have the extended nostril. We have this shape, tight muzzle. We can actually see this part of the lip, so we know he's already sucking in his lip and tucking that back. We have the worry lines here and here. And we can actually see the tension in the whole face here, here, all down in here, there, down in here. We can see these lines here, so we know the jaw is clenched. And now we have the ears pointing like this. So this horse does not know what to do. It's bewildered. It does not. Shit's coming down the pipe and I'm not sure what to do. So something I have no idea what, but whatever it is creating a lot of tension. And now I want to talk about this because fear-free horse training. And so I wanted to take a look at this horse. So this is the horse that's on the cover of the book. We're going to move this already. So we see the worry here. We see the tension here. The ears are like this and like this, so it's unsure. Now we go down here, see the tension down in here. You can see the tension in the lip right in here. And then you can see the tension here, and you can actually see the lines here. And so there's a lot of expression in this horse's face. So we need to ask ourselves, why is the horse this uncomfortable? And why was this horse chosen to be on the cover of this book for fear-free horse training? Like I wouldn't have chose this picture because I would have wanted to choose a horse that wasn't showing any signs of fear. but who knows, right? And I'm pointing this out because 9 times out of 10, because you read Fear Free Horse Training, you would think everything looked hunky dory in this horse pitch. Well, look again, think again, look at the tension. So that's not fear free look. Okay. Now, what do you see in this picture?
Looks more curious than afraid.
Huh? And then what tells you that it's curious than afraid?
Well, it doesn't look like it's going to run away, or I don't see a whole amazing ton of tension, but I can't see the face very closely.
So let's look at that closely. Let's see if we can see anything. And so I still don't see much tension either. I see curiosity. What I do see is the tightness here. So even though he's reaching forward and he's looking, his stomach muscles are engaged here. So that means he is ready to pull himself back if need be. And so the tail's lifted a little bit. We see a little bit of tension in here. And so when we look here, we see that. So we do know he's just not blindly going there and thinking everything's going to be hunky dory. He is curious, but he is physically prepared to react should he need to. And so this picture is here because so many people are terrified of bears. So then their horses are scared of bears. And I wanted to put this in here that for the most part, a lot of horses are scared of bears because their riders are scared of bears. If their riders weren't scared of bears, the horse wouldn't be scared of bears. So of course it goes with what I was saying earlier, what's our part in all of this? Okay. And so in all of these scenarios, again, it's much better when you have people here. The questions that get asked are, how would you respond? How would your horse respond to your above action? And then what reasons may have caused your horse to behave this way? So these are the things that you want to be thinking about when we look at the scenario. So scenario 1, you are leading your horse with the goal of working on some obstacles in hand. As you head out to the arena, you spot a tarp and decide to grab it. As you bend down to grab the tarp, your horse steps on the edge of it just as you lift it up. Your horse scoots backwards to the end of the line with eyes bugged out, nostrils flared, head up, neck arched. His respiration is up, and so is the energy in his feet as he moves back and forth at the end of the line. And so when you look at this scenario, you think, okay, so first thing I want you to think about is, what just happened to my horse? And is my horse showing any sign of being disrespectful to me? Is my horse showing any sign of aggression towards me? Is my horse misbehaving in any way, shape, form, or fashion? I want you to look at all of those questions, and I want you to think about your answer, your real answer. Not the answer that you think I want to hear, but your real answer, because your real answer will determine the outcome on all of this. And so if you don't want the outcome that you've been having, then it's time you start looking at yourself and start thinking, well, okay, how am I going to change this outcome? What part in this is mine? What part do I own? And now that I've owned that ownership, what can I do to help my horse with this physiological response? And so, yeah, I'm not quite sure what to do here. I'm not quite sure if I just go ahead and tell you everything or I just leave it. What do you think, Manny?
For my benefit, it's nice to hear it because I don't have a horse, so,
All right.
you know,
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. So when you bent down to grab the tarp, a couple of things would have happened. You would have disappeared from the horse's vision. So instantly, when you stand back up, you appear back into the horse's vision. But now you have this big thing that's coming up with you because the horse has stepped on the end of the tarp. So now, as you stand back up, this whole thing appears to be coming right back up. So, had you just bent down and stood back up without touching the tarp, probably nothing would have happened. But the fact that you stood back up and you were different than when you disappeared, that's a big signal to the horse like, whoa, something's changed in my environment. Let's get out of Dodge. Let's keep myself safe here. So your horse ran to the back of the line. He never pulled the line out of your hand. He never jerked you. He never did anything. He just went to the end of his line. So he was showing a lot of respect for the line. He was showing a lot of respect to you. And he was managing his shit within the length of line that he had to manage his shit in. But the fact that he's moving back and forth and his head's up and his eyes are up, he is in a very high responsive state. So this is not the time to walk forward with the tarp because, oh, well, we have to desensitize you with the tarp. This is the time to drop the tarp and stand there and wait patiently for the horse to get into a space where it's responsive. And when it's responsive, you can ask it to move forward. And maybe it only moves 3 feet or 2 feet or 6 inches. But again, you wait. And eventually, if you're patient enough, the horse will come up and sniff the tarp. And this time, when you bend down to pick the tarp up, you're going to lift it up slowly so that it does not elicit the response in the horse. You'll walk forward with your tarp, going out to the thing to carry on what you're doing. But before you start doing any more obstacle work, you're going to have to do some things to make sure your horse is securely grounded back into a responsive state, because otherwise your whole session in the arena is just going to be compounding that trauma event. Because remember, we talked about this. So we can't continually be going trauma, 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 because it makes our bodies lock on and then we're stuck in that state. Well, the same thing happens to them. And so we need to get really cognizant about what we're doing and think about what it is that we actually want to be able to create in our horse. And if it's any kind of partnership or connection, that doesn't happen when they're engaged in the fight or flight response thing. Does that help?
that was
Okay. All right. Scenario 2. You are terrified of bears, so much so that you never ride the local trails. Never is capitalized. Today, you find yourself unable to say no to a group of other riders. Consequently, you are now out on a trail ride with them. Everyone else is laughing and talking, but you are on high alert, scanning for a bear. At some point, you notice your horse's neck is covered with white lather. So I want to talk about this on various levels. So the fact that you never ride the local trails, but today you are unable to say no, that tells me that you as a person are people pleasing. Now, why are you people pleasing? Because of a lot of shit ass trauma in your life. And so that's the way you learned how to survive. And I want you to think about that, because in this situation, you didn't do yourself any favors. So this is not showing up for yourself. This is not being kind to yourself. This is, I don't know. I guess slowly trying to destroy yourself, because everything that's going on in your bodies, because number one, you're already scared. But now, number two, you already broke a promise to yourself to keep yourself safe by agreeing to go with this group. So now your horse is paying the price because he's picking up on all of that tension. So his neck is covered with white lather. So the fact that he's even managing to manage his shit is absolutely amazing. And so these kinds of things are where you get bucked off, or your horse bolts and you fall off and you get hurt. And then it's all about the stupid horse. Well, I'm sorry, but somewhere along the lines, you crossed the line and didn't respect yourself enough and didn't show up for yourself. And I realize trauma is a big thing, and I realize people pleasing is a big thing, because all of us that have faced trauma pretty much are all people pleasers, because it's easier to go along with the flow than to create a ruffle. And I know that firsthand. But when you're involved with horses, you're responsible for their well-being. You are 100% responsible for their well-being. So if you can't manage to look after yourself, then you need to step up to the plate and look after your horse. And so really, really important to take a step and think about the things that you're doing in your life that end up making you pay a price, because that's continuing the trauma. And if you want to get out of the trauma, we have to stop the trauma, because we can't have a trauma-free life if we're continuing to put ourselves in situations where we're constantly putting trauma in our bodies. And now, should the horse have bucked or bolted and you fell off, just think what your fear would be like then, or the trauma inside your body. And so health-wise, I don't see how you can continue to impact your body like this without it showing up in horrible ways down the road. So then I get asked a lot, well, what should I have done? Well, you should say, I'm too scared of bears, too scared they're out there. And they might have laughed and said, your fear is retarded. Well, maybe it is, but it's not them wearing the fear. It's not them in your physiological body. It's you. And so let's own where we're at and say, okay, yeah, well, I'm glad you guys are all hunky-dory, but I'm not. I'm going to stay where I feel safe, because if I feel safe, my horse is going to feel safe. That makes the two of us much safer. That makes me much safer. And then maybe if you thought, well, I'm really missing out on trail riding, well, maybe that's what you need in order to really start doing the work, to work on your trauma and work on your physiological body and start undoing some of the damage that this has caused so that some of these fears that have no basis in reality can slowly dissipate their way out. And, you know, that's Eva Detko's happening. You know, all of the things that we've been learning about all the way along and all the different releases, they're meant to be used. They're meant to be utilized. You don't just learn them and shove them away in some closet. So everything that I've put together here from the start all the way to the end is if you're showing up and you're doing the work, well, you're growing and it's making a huge difference in your life. There's some sort of fallacy, and I want to talk about this because I remember many years ago being totally pissed off because you're led to believe that when you're damaged goods, if you do the work to undo the damage, then suddenly you're good. Well, that's the biggest pack of shit I've ever come across in my entire life. So all of my crap, I have to continually work on it. 3 days go by and I'm not doing my mindful stuff and I'm not paying attention. I slip back and I revert back into stuff that I learned to survive as a child. So this personal growth work isn't something that you do and then think, yeah, I'm here and I can quit. This is something that you need to be focused on and working on every single day of your life, because otherwise you're just going to slide back to where you were before you started. And I guess that's a little bit of a rant, but it's really, really, really important to me because there is no free pass. There is no free ride. And yeah, so I guess that's enough of that. Next. Scenario 3. You are out riding with some friends on a trail. 2 horses ahead of you, the rider yells, "Hornets." The horse directly in front of you starts to buck. Your horse starts to back up. The riders behind you are yelling at you to get going. What do you do? Like, what would you do in this situation? So, most of the people I have met, most of the people I have witnessed out on the trail would, if their horse started to back up, they would pull back on the reins because they'd want to stop the horse from doing what it's doing, not realizing that they are putting more tension and more pressure on the horse. And there would be a really good chance that the horse that had started to back up would now be under more pressure because the riders behind you are yelling at you to get going. That's going to create a whole whack of pressure on you because you're already pulling back on the reins, trying to make the horse stop what it's doing. And so even, and, you know, that's the wrong thing to be doing, but nonetheless, that's what I see happening all of the time. And so next thing you know, your horse is going to be bucking because the tension in your body is escalating because it's not stopping. And so you're like gasoline to fire. And all of the tension from all of the riders behind yelling, that creates tension, that creates fear, that creates physiological responses. And so total recipe for disaster, see this a lot. So pulling back on the reins does not stop a horse's behavior. So you don't like how your car is driving, you put the brakes on. Well, if it's icy out, that's not going to change the horse or the car's travel. In fact, it's going to speed it up. If it's loose gravel, same thing. So everybody has this idea, I don't like it, I'm going to pull back, I'm going to stop it. So wrong thing. Your horse starts to back up. Before he's even starting to take a step backwards, you should have already made a plan. So I see a clear opening here. I can turn safely here and go back to the end of the lineup. Or I can go through here and I can go around where those hornets are. I have a plan on how to keep myself and my horse safe. And forget about what all the other people are yelling or screaming or doing whatever, because they're just as afraid of you. And they're just expressing it in a different way, shape, form, or whatever. And so you really want to have a plan, because if you're going to be safe riding, you need to have a plan. My horse is going to do this. I'm going to do this. If this happens and I start to feel like this, I'm going to do this. And everyone else that you're riding with is irrelevant. Doesn't matter what they say or what they think. You're doing what's best for you. And if they don't like it, tough shit. They can't find it within themselves to be supportive or kind, find a new group of people or ride by yourself. So really, really, really important to think about what's going on, because you pretty much know the horse bucking in front of you. When it's finished bucking, it's going to try to run somewhere. And the reason it's bucking is because the hornets, when they come out of a nest in the ground and they go and they sting your horse, they don't just sting it and fly away. They hang on and keep stinging it. So very uncomfortable. The horse wants to get rid of them. And is bucking because the owner is holding on the stupid reins and not letting it move forward at a great rate of pace or sideways or backwards or some way so they can get out of there. And if all of the hornets are underneath the belly, well, it's going to be bucking and kicking and whatever, regardless, whatever you're doing. So if you ride on trails, you can expect to find hornets sooner or later. So you better have a plan in your head and think about how you're going to deal with this. You're not a confident rider? Well, maybe getting off very quickly and leading your horse to safety is how you want to do it. Typically, the hornets aren't going to fly backwards and get the people at the back of the line. Typically, the hornets are going to be zoned in around their hole, protecting their hole. So as long as you don't get in that zone, you're safe. You just have to figure out your plan, figure out how you're going to do this. Okay, scenario 4. Okay. So here, changes. Okay, you lead your horse to the mounting block. You are standing directly in front of your horse so you can see the mounting block. And when you get your horse in the right position, you loosen your hold on the reins so you can move towards the mounting block. Your horse stands perfectly still until you step up onto the mounting block, and then your horse scoots sideways. So what do? Well, I guess I get to see a lot of people get really mad at their horse and get the whip out and do some fiddling around. I've seen people kick them. I've seen all sorts of horrible stuff happen because of all of this. So there's a really good chance your horse scooted sideways because when you stepped up on the mounting block, you stepped into its vision range again and it startled it. The other reason it could scoot sideways is because it doesn't want you on its back. And it knows what comes next. So if that's the case, you need to ask yourself why. Why does my horse not want me on its back? What's my part in this? What's the tax part in this? What is the activities that I'm choosing to do part of this? What is my mental state part of this? Because when you get those things all figured out, your horse will stand at the mounting block. Scenario 5, you are in the process of saddling your horse. When you go to do up your cinch or your girth, you notice your horse has expanded its belly. So what do you do? Okay, so I get to watch a lot of people. They know, oh, my horse is going to expand its belly. So then they tighten the cinch really quickly. Or they walk the horse around a little bit and then they retighten the cinch. Or they knee it in the belly. Or they kick it in the belly. Or they get the cinch with the rollers so that it's easier to do up regardless of how much the horse is sticking its belly out. But the question we ought to be asking is, why is the horse doing this in the first place? What's been done to it to make it not be okay with the cinching and girthing process? What has the human done to it? So when we get around to doing the anatomics part, you'll learn that how the muscles run underneath the chest. And you'll learn that most of the cinches, when you go to do them up and do them up tightly, you're actually spreading and you can tear those muscle fibers and they don't join back up, they don't heal. So once somebody has done something like that, the horse 9 times out of 10 will be cinchy for the rest of its life. And if I were to put a band around your belly and put my foot in the center of your back and cinch it up, and it was uncomfortable for you to breathe, I'm quite sure the next time you seen the cinch coming, you wouldn't kind of like that idea either. But we don't give any of those things consideration. We don't think about keeping our hand between the cinch and the skin so that as we pull up, it can't pull or twist or pinch. And, nor do we really pay much attention to our girths. We buy a girth because somebody said this is a good girth, but do we look at it? Do we figure it out? What kind of testing has the girth been under? What kind of awards in design has the girth won? And that's part of why I use the DK cinches, because they've won all sorts of awards, and the whole part that goes on the sensitive muscles tissues in behind the legs is one big flat padded part of the cinch. So there's absolutely no way it can pull, stretch, tear, push, or do anything to any of the musculature structure there. And then it has elastic on both ends. So even if I wanted to do that cinch up as hard as I could get it, the horse still has give because the elastic's on both ends. And so there's a lot of things to be really cognizant of. But I'll reiterate with the only reason the horse is cinchy in the first place is because some human did something to it. End of story. Okay. This here is a little video, and I thought that it was really, really well done. And so Luke Reinhold is showing his horse, and his horse is afraid of a stump that's on the side of the road. And so he's showing how he works within the area the horse is capable of being responsive. So he doesn't push it beyond that. And so the sole goal here is your horse doesn't have the option of turning this way, turning that way, running, avoiding, but at the same time, you're not pushing it so that it feels it needs to do those things. And so I thought he did a really good job explaining and showing, and I wanted to play this. Oh no, this is mine. Oh, this is mine. So just a sec, I didn't get tears. Okay, so wrong thing. Now I'll tell you about mine. So this is feel. So same thing. This is about knowing when to ask and when to wait. So in this little video, a neighbor is leading one of my horses. Now, she has very little horse experience, but what she does have is good feel. And so you notice her pause when the horse is at its most concerned. And you can tell the horse that it's most concerned because of his ears, face, eyes, and his tail's way up in the air. And she pauses to give the horse enough time to get to a place where he can move forward. Now, had she not paused, the horse would have probably jerked the rope from her hand and went backwards. So this is what this is showing, and that's why it's titled Feel. See the horse look? See the tension? See the doubt? See the neck come up? She stops, she waits. Okay. And so what did you think of that?
Was good. I enjoyed it.
Could you see what I was trying to get across?
Yeah, you could see she was aware of the horse and it's being a little hesitant.
So this is the other video that this is Luke's. Oh, huh.
Okay guys, I really wish I had my GoPro on right now, but you see Cheech here, you see that stump? There's a couple of them from these
I
on the
don't
side
know
of
how
the
to
road, they're old maple stumps.
make
Well, Cheech
this.
thinks this is,
I don't know how to make it smaller. Um, let's see. What can I do here? Yeah, I don't know. Could I do this? Does this make it different? Yeah, okay. All right, so let's see what happens here.
I don't know, a bear or something. I'm gonna do my best to not try and drop my phone here. But you see these tracks right here in the road?
I don't actually see anything, but I can hear it well.
Trying to get away from this.
Okay, so you
Now,
can't see
things
it.
like this are not
Okay.
uncommon at all. We run into
Okay, so you can't see it. So, all right, so just a second here. Okay, all right, so, all right, so then I can do this. Just a sec. Now I think I got to do this here. Okay, all right. And I am sharing now these two things here and here. All right, so if I go. All right, so now you can see this, right?
Yep, I got it.
All right, okay. Oh, just a sec. Now the volume. Jesus, bloody hell.
You see these tracks right here in the road? He just about was on his belly here just a second ago trying to get away from this. Now, things like this are not uncommon at all. We run into this all the time with colts. And this is the first, I mean, we were up in the woods and everywhere, crossing the melting snow and all this stuff. But we're asking him to step forward here. That's a good boy. We're going to try to, again, keep on this phone. What I'm going to work towards is he's actually going to go up and touch that. Smell it, paw it, I don't care what he does, but he needs to check this off his list of his senses, in other words. So his sense of sight is what's cueing in him that this is scary. Once he gets past that and to where, come on, he can tell off another sense that it isn't that bad, then he's gonna relax into this, okay, and then see that it's really not as scary as he thinks. There you go. So he's stepping up and he's working for me. And he's trying here. So I'm going to keep him facing this, no matter what. It is interesting when you have a colt that's not one-handed and you're holding a phone. Obviously, we're down a hand here. But we'll just keep working this out. Now he's trying to skirt it to the right, and he would shoot by it if I let him. But that would be doing him a disservice. Come on, step. Good. He's gaining a little bit of distance. There, and he's tight. I can feel this all through his body, okay? You're okay, buddy. You're okay. This is the closest he's gotten to it so far. He's getting another perspective, a different angle. There, now he's thinking about going around it to the left. So I pick up that right rein and ask him to stay here, focused on it. There we go. Now he's trying to the right. You're all right. Now watch him. Once he gets up here and he smells this, you're going to hear him probably breathe. Now he's looked away. See, I'm not. It's almost like he's pretending. See, I wasn't scared. I was just seeing if you were scared. But as we do this consistently, every time we run into some silly stump or a piece of farm machinery or who knows, a beer can on the side of the road, whatever, that's opportunity. There, good boy. Give him that double shoulder rub down with one hand. Insert sarcasm. We'll ask him to just keep working through this. There's a big sniff. There's one of his other senses, right? Because now he can smell it, and he's touched it. Making him a little bit better. There we go. Now, his whole body, I know you can't feel this, his whole body is softened now. Now he's almost intrigued, right? He's probably going to bite it, chew on it, whatever. That's fine. He's exploring his world, and we've just got to let that happen. So this is a fun situation that I knew we were going to experience, so I thought I'd video it. And then we'll ride away, taking a better horse away than we brought up. And that's exactly how I'll use trails. So thanks for coming along. Ride Index Stride. Make it a great day.
All right. And so what he was showing on there, I thought he did a really good job of showing how you work within the ability, because if he'd have pushed harder, the horse would not have been able to stand there. The horse would have been panicking and only focused on getting away. So it's about working where you're at. And now we can apply that to ourselves. So same thing. If we're scared of spiders, maybe it's okay that we're in the same house and there's a spider 2 houses over. Maybe eventually we can have a spider in a different room in the same house that we're in. It's not about just dragging yourself up there and thinking you're going to white knuckle your way through it, because as we've been learning, that doesn't do your physiological body any justice. It's not what we want to be doing. We want to work it within our levels because we don't want to keep putting trauma into our bodies. And so the big question, how does fear express itself in your body and mind? How with your horse? A lot of people will find that they are more nervous when you're with your horse than when you're not. And part of that's because all of their stuff feeds the horse and then the horse feeds back. So the two of you are feeding off that shared energy field. How does fear express itself in your horse's body and mind? So now this is about taking a thought and thinking about, well, what's going on here and what do I see here? And if I change my being, how does that change what my horse is experiencing? How does the rider anatomic position on the horse affect the horse in regard to fear escalation of both horse and rider? And so big ticket item there, because when we have fear posture, we lean forward. And when we lean forward, that puts pressure on the saddle and that drives it down in and creates pain for the horse. So, you know, we have forward pelvis. The horse wants to move ahead to get away from that pressure. So this little diagram that we're coming up here shows this really well. So it shows how everything changes. So here we are, normal. Now we're in the fear. So you see how we've rotated our pelvis forward. We have a bigger arch in our back, and then we even have the forward head position. And so then, of course, we're cranking on the reins because we're concerned about all of that. And so this change shows in a shortened stride. You can see that that's what it's showing with the, okay? It's showing where you're putting more musculature pressure because of that change, what you're doing to the horse's pole and neck. And so just because you're afraid, even if your horse started off not being afraid, it's not going to take long before they're going to be reacting. And then that's going to make you more afraid. So if you want to go anywhere, do anything kind of horse, it all starts with you. Not about getting a better horse. Well, not all the time. So if we want to help our horses get rid of the physiological responses that we've been learning a lot about ourselves, we need to learn how to bring safe to our horses. So we need to learn about our body and function, which we've been doing. We need to learn about our horse's body and function, which we've been doing. We need to develop a strong awareness of mindfulness of the shared energy field, which we should have been doing all along. Improve your energetic congruency and frequency, and set boundaries and be respectful of boundaries. So if your horse doesn't like his face being rubbed, that's a boundary. So when you decide, no, my horse is just going to get used to me rubbing his face, how disrespectful are you being to that horse's boundary? So you don't like tickling, but that's okay. Everybody can just throw you on the ground anyhow and tick you. Well, you know how pissed off you'd get. Well, so let's start applying all of those same things right back to the horse, because a boundary is a boundary. You need to listen to your horse. You need to understand what your horse is saying. You need to become able to recognize where, when, and what to work. You need to adopt the I got your back attitude. You need to be able to look deeper into your horse care setup. And I realize a lot of these things might make you uncomfortable, but nonetheless, they're where we need to go. And it's no different if you apply this to looking at, your parenting skills, your dog raising skills. All of these same things can be applied across the board, because it's all part and parcel of having a connection and developing a partnership in a relationship. So outside of the horse box care, so we have
Hello, Pain Free for Life community, and welcome to another video demonstration. In this one, Laurie and Heidi show us how to locate the vagus nerve on a horse and how to stimulate it using our Avasia technology to deal with any systemic inflammatory issues. We hope you find it useful.
And we've wet this down on part of his neck where we're going to be treating, and also to show you where the carotid artery is. The vagus nerve sits behind the carotid. So if you press here as if you were going to give an IV injection, you can see when you pull the thumb away that that nerve will collapse. I mean, the blood vessel will collapse right there. I'll do it again so you can see. And when I take my thumb away, watch it collapse right into there. So the vagus nerve is always going to be on this side right up against that. So we're going to come down. This is all aloe vera in here to moisten it. We're going to come down until we find it. And you can see right there how the muscles start to shiver. And it's on 21, so I'm going to come down. It's a little strong. We're going to hold here for 2 minutes.
You see,
That sound coming from him is kind of an entrainment with this. Although when he took that deep breath, it went away just a tiny bit. So you can, there it comes back. You didn't have to touch it. And if you place your hand up against the muscle, you can feel the vibration. So you never want to go too high. And if you look right underneath, you can see the vibration. Always remembering, especially with horses, they're far more sensitive than we are. So less is always going to be more. Carotid artery runs right through here. Spin it sideways sometimes to elevate. And what you should start seeing is licking and chewing. As the horse relaxes, the head will start dropping. Eye starts to get quiet. You can see right under here the slight muscle jumping. When I place my fingers up against it, I can feel it underneath of the skin. Horses have them in different places. You're going to get sensations. Sometimes you can get it all the way up in here. Sometimes you have to come down a little bit further. And you just do the same thing on the other side. Done.
All right. And so you always remember, you always keep your horse safe. Your horse will always keep you safe. And then, what if? And so that question should become a mainstay. Well, what happens if, or what if I do this? What if it's like this? What if I change this? What if I did this? Or what if I changed my shirt? So whenever things aren't going, or your horse doesn't have this happy, relaxed expression, it's time to start asking what ifs, like what if I change this? What if I did? And play and look at that. And so this is part of what I call my outside the box horse care. And so over the last few years, I've really been using evolution as a guide, and I've been really looking what a horse evolved to do and live like and exist like, and comparing that to what we currently offer our horses. And so, yeah. So here we are. Okay. So horses started off, this little spotted dude there. And so as things changed in the environment, they changed. So they started off eating bushes and young tree shoots and stuff like that. Because back in that era, that's what was present. I'm not sure if I just, yes, I think, yeah, okay. And so then we went along, and we still have a toad guy. And then we go along a little bit more. We still have toad, but you notice they're getting bigger and bigger. And the shape of the neck and the back is totally changing. But they're still eating herbaceous plants, bushes, young trees, and shoots. But you notice the teeth are starting to change a little bit. And we're looking at this because on average, so this in this period is where they also started to eat grass. And you notice it's got hooves. It still has this toe back here, but and so now it's a grazing animal. So we've lost the trees and shrubs. Skull shapes changed. You see how the molars have totally changed. And so grasses, teeth have changed, are a bit more crowned. And then here we are with this, our current horse. And so typically it takes at least 100 years for anything inside a body to start to adapt to its environment. So we wouldn't know if our bodies can adapt to the EMF radiation, as an example, unless we were able to be exposed to a certain wavelength of it for at least 100 years. But because it's changing so rapidly, we don't have a hope in hell of adapting. So we've done the same thing to our horses. So we've taken them from one environment and plunked them into another environment that we think is the best. So we've decided having the horse in a barn is an absolutely amazing way to keep horses. And it's depicted that way in every single magazine you pick up, and, you know, all of the high-end horse ownership things, they all have these big fancy stalls, big closed barns. Well, okay. So is some of the stress our horses facing because we are keeping them in a practice that they have not yet become adapted to? Horses in the wild always have some sort of a say. Does your horse in captivity have a say? Because my guess is you feed it when it's convenient for you. You add other horses to the herd because that's what you want to do. You move it to a new pasture when you decide to move it to a new pasture. So the horse doesn't have any say in any of these things. And so we've changed a lot of things up for them. We're just not, we just haven't paid attention to all of the demands that we've actually made on them. And then for a large number of us, it's pretty hard to own the fact that we could be the sole reason our horse is stressed. Cannot open specified file. Okay, what about this one? So does it tell me where it's from? Okay, so I will, this, I don't know why it won't let me open it, stupid thing, but anyhow, I'll go back to it. I'll see if this one will. Okay, and so this is what I've come up with for my fly control. So shade is a very big bug deterrent. So in my setup, I've tried to give 4 different levels of shade. So the first, we walk in, that's the second level. The first stall you see there, that's the 3rd level of darkness. And then the last stall is the 4th level of darkness. And so my horses have free access to this area 24/7. And so they pick and choose the depth of the shade that they want. And so the trees all around the property also act as a shade buffer. And so the horses pick and choose from there as well. And so there's a lot of different areas that they get to pick and choose from. And while I'm trying to get my thing to work here. Okay. Okay, yeah. So, uh, one first. Can you see that?
No, I just see the thing that says Zoom and meetings.
Okay, so, all right. So anyhow, I am. Okay, so now I'm. Okay, so if I do this, and do share. There. Oh, there. Share everything you can share. All right. So now, can you see that now?
Yes, I can see that.
All right. So I go. All right. So this is my barn. And so this is the covered alleyway. So they get one level of shade there. And then you come in. So there's another level of shade. This has a window here. So this stall's lighter. And then this is the darker stall. And so, yeah. So eventually, when I first started, I just had these stalls here. But then I realized that it wasn't adequate. So added this piece on, and then we added this piece on so that I got the fly control that I was looking to get. And so then in my pasture, what I did was this. Why is it acting like a retard? Why? Okay, so, yep. All right, can you see that?
No, I just see the page with all of your items on it.
Oh my God, this thing, like, I just got to keep adding. All right, so we're going to add that one too. All right. Okay. Thank you, Mamie. All right. So this here is the 10-acre property. So what we did to mimic as much as we could how they would live and how they have choice. So we have, these are separate pastures. You see there's gates with each one there, and there's also gates at the other end. This is all trees around here. So depending on how we open the gates is how it determines where the horses go to graze or do whatever. No matter where they are, they always have to come back here to the water. And this area here is what I call the sacrifice area, because it gets beat all to nothing, because that's the route that they have to travel to get to, all of these different pastures. And they have a pasture here, a pasture here, a pasture here, and a pasture here. And this is a creek. And so again, then they eat everything that's in here and out. So I don't do any lawn mowing. The horses eat everything. And there's a gate for access to this pasture. And so the whole 10 acres, other than probably a half an acre that we have these little buildings crammed in, is all for the horses. And So we get to pick and choose. And this here is a windbreak for the barn. And so this is how I came up with an idea to try to give the horses the most choice, the most say, so they could eat 24/7 and yet still be getting huge amounts of exercise. So in the wintertime, we can feed them way over here and then make them have to go through this gate and go all the way around to come back for their water. And it took a while to get this all figured out, but it does make a difference in how healthy and happy the horses are. And so it's well worth taking your piece of property and sitting down and trying to figure out how you can make this work the best so that you can mimic what I keep calling outside of the horse, outside of the box horse care. Okay. And so now I have to go way over here again. So this. All right. Okay. So that's the feed and exercise in the shelter. Okay. And so the other things that we need to consider with our outside the box horse care when we're looking at our horses, companionship. So does our horse like who we have it partnered with? The companion that it has, do they groom each other? Do they spend time with each other? Do they like each other? What about their feet? What do we do to make sure they have the healthiest feet? What are the things that we can do? What about our routines? So do we need to look at our routines? Do we need to change our routines? Is there ways that we can set things up to be more free choice? And I mean, some of the things, that come to mind are, I don't know where a horse evolved to stand in one spot and eat. Because in all of the countryside I've looked at where they actually run wild, they're moving constantly to eat. But yet we seem to think that it's okay to stick a round bale in the middle of the field and have the horses stand there 24/7 eating off the hay bale. So we need to start asking ourselves, how much of the colic and how much of the founder and how much of all of these disorders are because of how we are looking after our animals? How much of it? Like, can you answer that question? Because I've certainly asked it a lot. And they're tough questions to ask yourself. But I think they need to be asked. The train. So do you always ride in the flat or do you have flat and hills? Because what about the horse's musculature is dependent on going both ways. So if you always ride a trail one way, then your horse will become lopsided because one set of muscle groups will get used more than the other. And when you have lopsidedness, then you end up with lameness issues and all sorts of other problems. The same as doing the lunging circles. I don't know anybody that counts, but you ought to be counting. So many on this side, so many on that side, because after all, we want to keep our horses balanced. Riding partners. Does your horse like who you ride with? Do you like who you ride with? Like big ticket questions that we need to start asking ourselves because they all have a huge bearing on the physiological responses going on inside our horse's body, not to mention our own when we screw up with this. And so the same thing would be, so I decided, oh, you over there. Okay, yeah, you're getting too fat. So from here on in, you're just going to get the food that I'm feeding you. That's it. Yeah. So now, what do you think's going to happen? You're going to be focused on when your next meal's coming all day because you're starving, you're hungry. And the first second you have to get out of the little room that I have you locked into, what are you going to be doing? You're going to be like wolfing down whatever you can. And yet we seem to think that's okay to do that to our horses. So I think, a lot of people might want to shoot me in the head for all of this stuff that I'm saying, but I honestly believe that it needs to be thought about and it needs to be considered because we are a big part of all of this. So we can keep on going with this list. How do you ask? Do you ask your horse if it wants to be ridden? Or do you tell it, this is what we're doing, dude? There's a big difference. What's our posture saying? What are our mannerisms saying? Are we congruent? What's our lack of congruency doing to our horse? Are you naked? And I mean naked in, are you, what you see is what you get. Have you bared your soul? Are you vulnerable? If you're busy hiding, you're not doing your horse any favors. Are you trusting what you feel? If you're not and you're in your head, you're going to be consistently doing the wrong thing. And again, keep checking in with your routines. And got just enough time. We're going to finish off with Alexa's video here. And so this is, so Alexa does a little bit of stuff for humans. She does a lot of stuff for humans and she does stuff for horses. And so she put together this little kind of video and it kind of will go over the vagus nerve and, little bits of stuff. But then she has some little techniques that she uses. And so we're going to watch that and that will take us to the end of this session. And then we'll go over the homework. Get back here.
Hi everyone, it's Alexa Linton here and I'm excited to be here for Mona's course and to share with you a few of my little tricks for regulating the nervous system and supporting vagal tone. And I'm sure that you've been learning about the autonomic nervous system and even the polyvagal theory. And so we're going to get into that a little bit today around how to support your nervous system to be the most regulated you can be and to feel the best in your body. And to be able to work with, when anxiety is coming up or fear is coming up, be able to, find some ways to support. So just a quick introduction to me. I'm Alexa Linton. I am the founder of the Whole Horse Podcast and the Whole Horse Apprenticeship. I'm also a human osteopath and an animal communicator. So it's kind of a lot of different hats here. This is my cat, Makwa. Okay, off the table. And and I'm coming to you from the Cowichan Valley, so beautiful Vancouver Island in Canada. And I am also a horse person, so I have two horses, Diva and Raven, that I work with. We're just learning and growing together essentially. So we don't do anything super crazy. Diva's now 23 years old and Raven's 8 and she's a purebred Canadian. And so we just have a lot of fun together. They live on a track system to, again, help with their regulation and their movement and flow in their environment. And yeah, they're quite happy with that. They also get regular body work and other sort of energy work, PEMF and various things. And yeah, we do some fun training, including Liberty and straightness training, yeah, target training. So yeah, we're really enjoying the variety, and you know, it's very interesting for all of us, I hope. I think my horses would think so. So yeah, so let's get into it a little bit. Let's get into this, these practices and why we want to do this. Why is it important? What does it work with? So Dr. Stephen Porges developed what's called the polyvagal theory, which Mona may have covered a little bit. The idea being that we are departing somewhat from the very simplistic understanding of the autonomic nervous system, which is there is a gas and a brake, and we've got the gas is the sympathetic system, the brake is the parasympathetic, and they sort of go on and off accordingly with our stress and stimulation through our days, through our time here. So essentially the polyvagal theory brings some nuance to our understanding of the autonomic nervous system, still understanding the sympathetic channels as this fight drive, but creating some more distinction within the parasympathetic branches of the autonomic nervous system, which is what we've typically considered the rest and digest nervous systems. So the idea that there's a ventral and a dorsal branch, the ventral being sort of the newer branch and very involved with things like social engagement and shared rhythmic behaviors. So the calmness that comes with, you know, singing with another person, or even riding with your horse when you're getting to this beautiful rhythm with them. And we see this in horses where they start to calm around like things like ingestion behavior. So when they're eating, they are able to sort of regulate in a different way. Or when they're doing things together, we might see our horses in the herd sort of grazing in a shared position where their heads are facing a similar way and they're moving in a similar trajectory, and there's sort of this sense of this connection between them. And what we need to understand about horses is they have their nervous systems are pretty much, you know, if not identical, very, very closely linked to our own as a mammal. And they also uniquely have this real sense of community mindedness. And so horses do prioritize community, as do a lot of humans that are well regulated. And they prioritize social engagement and what that looks like. And a lot of the things that we have learned about horses and training, like say dominance theory or, you know, the successive negative reinforcement training, have been missing this nuance of the function of the autonomic nervous system and how this changes their way of interacting with their space. So for example, if training is based on, say, you know, 4 horses and their behavior when they're all stuck together in a paddock, which is too small, with only maybe a couple of feeding stations for all of them, and a couple of watering stations, if not just one watering station. And then when we observe the behavior, we may see resource guarding, hierarchy, stress behavior, weaving, you know, all these sorts of things, or aggression even, because this is not a natural habitat. There is not free access to resources, where they might be, you know, say out on 100 or 200 acres, loads of grass, lots of ponds, you know, there's no need to move into a fight or flight behavior pattern in those spaces. And so a lot of our training methods are based off of this observation of horses that are in a space where they cannot help but resource guard and go into that sympathetic responsive fight or flight. So we see this dominance and hierarchy in these spaces, and you know, for years and years, in many training systems, this was the thing, right? It's like, you know, got to be the boss, and you know, there's this hierarchy, and you need to be one up, and all these things, and you need to get respect, and you know, and it's not the case. So when we take the nervous system into a space of regulation, that's where we need to base our training from, and also to be aware that when those behaviors are arising in our horses, it's actually a sign of stress. Just like it is for us when we don't feel like our basic needs are being met, there's of course stress in our system. There's of course a sense of fear around, am I going to be taken care of in these spaces? Am I going to get enough to eat? Am I going to have a roof over my head? Am I going to, you know, be able to get these base needs met? And so when we start to think about it like that, I really think it changes so much for us as far as what's actually happening for our horses. And, you know, when we're sort of desensitizing, what does that really need to look like to address supporting your horse to be regulated and relaxed around various stimulus? That might not look like throwing stuff at them and, you know, getting them used to it and waiting for them to go into what we call a dorsal vagal response, which is a collapse, shutdown, I'm not okay, like learned helplessness response. Yes. So this can often be seen as, you know, oh, very broke horse, very tame horse. We need to be very careful of that, because that's actually a horse that is extremely shut down, and their nervous system has essentially said, this is not safe for me, and I just need to go away for a while. So when we recognize it from that level, we want to understand that we want to build and grow and support the ventral vagal tone. That's social engagement. That's feeling attuned. So when I see my horse and I see, oh, they're feeling very concerned in this moment about this particular stimulus, you know, whatever it is, this puddle or this whatnot, or I'm feeling quite concerned about something. Okay, you know, what's the attunement here? How can I be with this? And when I say attune, it's like, how can I actually get, like, really show that I'm getting this is what's happening for this horse, and that there's a no occurring in their system? And how do I attune to that worry in them so that they can start to relax and go, oh, my human gets it. They're attuning to me. They understand. They're not going to push me through it. It's going to be a different experience, yes, as opposed to, you need to do this now, upping the dominance and the pressure until the sympathetic nervous system comes up. We see the fight flight, and then the freeze, and then the collapse into the dorsal vagal system, right? When the horse goes, there's no other choice. I don't have a way out of this. I just have to shut down. Okay. And we do the same thing. You know, if you think back in your life, especially if you've had trauma in your life, you can remember potentially that moment where you just kind of gave up. That's the dorsal vagal system trying to protect us. Yeah. And as mammals, it's an extremely important part of our system. I mean, if we think of lions and you know, chasing antelope, we see this dynamic. We see the antelope running, so flight. We see them fighting off the lion when they get caught. We see all those phases, and then we see that antelope may even pass out, like literally their dorsal vagal system will just collapse, the whole system. So they're not feeling the next steps of that, which could be very, very painful. Now, so interesting when they come out of that spot. So say the lion gets distracted or something happens or they manage to get away. What a mammal will do, like what an antelope will do is, you know, and you can watch this, is they actually go into like a full body vibration shake to release that shutdown, and then come, you know, are able to come back out into a more regulated space. I mean, obviously there'll be a little, you know, little shaken, but it's different. And for humans, this is often a step that gets missed because we have social protocol and, you know, shame and all these things around coming out and shaking and moving that off, and or screaming, or, you know, having a response to things that occurred. That is outward and external and potentially uncomfortable for the people around us. So this is something that actually quite a few practitioners are working with now, and there's actually a body of work, if you want to dive deeper, called trauma response exercises. And this would be something, if you have experienced trauma and you feel there's some shutdown in your system, this is something you can actually work with to support that release from your nervous system, and to further heal your nervous system. Yeah, so trauma release exercises, TRE. All right, so I want to get into today some of the ways that we can support our own nervous system. And please remember that as we do this, as we regulate, become more regulated in ourselves, we actually do support our horses. This is just the wonderful way it is. So this piece around working the vagal tone is really important. So Mona wanted me to share a couple of exercises that I shared in a previous course. These are not my exercises. I want to say that right out. These are ones that I've learned through other people, but I do find them very helpful. And there's a few ways that we can actually support our vagal tone. So before I get into the exercise, I'm going to share a few ways. So one is ingestion behavior. So when we eat, it actually helps to kind of get the saliva going. The brain's like, oh, we're eating things, like everything must be okay. Really nice when we eat with friends that we feel comfortable and safe with. So like, you know, even sitting and having a granola bar while your horse is chewing on some grass, really nice little way to bring that vagal tone up. And that leads me to my second thing is shared behavior, like shared rhythms. So maybe you're like a knitter, you sit next to your friend or have your friend on Zoom and like knit together, right? Or go for a ride together, or sing together, dance together. These shared rhythms can be very potent for that particular branch of our nervous system, because remember, it's all about social engagement, community, the sense of connection being a part of our safety. Because of course, this is ingrained in our system, is like, you know, safety in numbers, right? So, so to bring these pieces in where, yeah, okay, I'm gonna create experiences where I'm doing these like shared rhythms with other people that I feel good with throughout my days or weeks, right? And that can be with your horse too. If you, one of my favorite meditations is just to actually stand with my horse at liberty, like in a big field, and then just essentially mirror their steps and their movements. So, you know, it's quite a beautiful meditation. It's just this shared rhythm, essentially. That's through Elsa Sinclair. If you haven't heard of Elsa Sinclair, definitely look her up. She's awesome. Okay. What else? You can do massage on your vagus nerve. You can, so down through here, getting body work as well, making sure your cranium is a happy camper, because the vagus nerve runs right through the temporal and occiput. So if you've had whiplash or any neck stuff, most of us have neck stuff, especially as riders. Getting that addressed by, in my opinion, an osteopath, we're called a DOMP in Canada here, is vitally important to making sure that track of the vagus nerve, that pathway is free. Yeah, breathing is a huge one. So I'm sure Mona has gone into diaphragmatic breathing. That is huge. The diaphragm is where the vagus nerve passes through. And so getting that breath is so, so important for vagal tone. Also, our horses synchronize the breath. So really, you know, that works on a couple of levels to support our vagus nerve and our autonomic nervous system as a whole. The other thing we want to know is when we breathe in, our ribs externally rotate. We actually get a small little pressurized experience on our sympathetic nervous system ganglions. So we get a little bit, that's why when we breathe in, we feel kind of alive, activated. And then when we breathe out, hopefully the ribs internally rotate and come off of those ganglions. So we get this sense of calm and peace and release on that out breath. So we can actually exaggerate the out breath to increase more parasympathetic input. And again, getting your body work done, making sure your ribs are happy is quite important, and that you can take a full deep breath, that your diaphragm is mobilized and moving well. Very important. Yeah. And I have seen people that actually do cold packs on their vagal pathways. Other people do cold swims, you see this more and more right now where people are doing cold plunges. That's actually can be incredibly helpful for vagal function. Yeah, and then we can do this little stretch that I'm going to show you right now. So what you're going to do is sit like me and hopefully both feet on the floor. I'm going to connect to your breath a little bit here. Yeah, good. And then what you're going to do is you're going to be facing forward with your head, but you're going to take your eyes over to the right, looking down towards your shoulder. And this is stretching the vagal pathway. You're going to notice that you feel a little release. You notice my head turns a little bit, which is totally fine. But letting that release happen and sort of following into the release. Very good. Nice. And then you're going to do that on the other side. So you're going to look straight forward, look to your left, look down to your shoulder, wait for the release, and then follow. Keep those eyes pointing down. Just follow the release as you stretch out that nerve. And then you're going to do that about 3 times each side. Woo! Yeah. And just feel into the letting go in your system. And one more thing that can help with the vagal function. So after you do that, if you're feeling very brave, you can do what's called a tone. The vagal nerve really likes the VOO sound. So you can do a humming tone to actually activate the nerve up in here. So you'll feel it when you do VOO. You can feel it actually vibrate in your throat. And you can do lower, higher, whatever pitch feels good. And just feel that vibration. So that's another really beautiful way to work with this. Yeah, so there you go. I hope that's helpful. And yeah, if you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out. So I'm at alexalinton.com and my email is alexa@alexalinton.com. And I look forward to chatting with you soon. Have a great day, everyone.
All righty. So now the homework is, as always, the 3 questions. What are your takeaways from today's session? What did you learn about yourself today? What can you apply moving forward based on what you learned today? And then there's 2 other questions. What feelings has this newfound awareness brought forth? What changes are you planning on making in your life and in your horse's life? And so I would like the answers to those 5 questions before our next class. And I probably won't write them in the email, but anyhow, you'll be able to just take them off your workbook. And so there we go. All righty. Now, whoops, I rubbed us out. Okay, so now I am, here we go.